Lepo pozdravljeni. Danes je z nami veliko veselje nam je dr. Martin Balluch, prihaja iz Avstrije. Gre za enega najbolj znanih, svetovno znanih aktivistov za pravice živali. Gospod Martin je tudi doktor filozofije, fizike in matematike. Najin pogovor naprej bo potekal v angleščini, ker moja nemščina je slaba, Martinova slovenščina pa nikakršna. So, please tell me one thing. Why should people go vegan?
Yeah, because it's just very easy and the best choice in order to look after animals, to not damage the environment, to not damage their health, to not destroy our planet. For me, it was a choice that came very smooth and easy because I just need to look into the eyes of an animal and you realize that this is a being just like you, feelings just like you, and how could I ever hurt or kill such a being for nothing more than just eating it?
Mm-hmm. Well, we tell this to people, but actually people don't care a lot about animals. They always say that animals are on this world for people, for humans, to consume, to use. So let's now see the other two things. People are selfish and they're more easily to be persuaded to go vegan if we tell them that they will be healthier. What is about vegan and health? How can you be healthier?
Veganism has the big advantage that the energy you get from that kind of food is exactly suitable to the way we have evolutionarily grown. It is rather little energy from fat and far more energy from carbohydrates, so from complex sugars that you can use for sports and movement, and you don't get fat from it, and you don't have cardiovascular disease, the arteries don't clot up. So it is sort of the natural way of eating, I'd say. So in that sense, yes, it is a healthy choice as well. But for me, that was never the primary approach. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there is a big myth that also medicine always is warning people. Well, B12. Actually, the B12 is big problem with all people, especially with our West culture. Why?
The funny thing with B12 is it's not in meat, it's not in eggs and milk, but it is produced by bacteria. And if the animals eat those bacteria who grow in organic dirt, then they will get their B12 from there. And then if you eat the animals, you get the B12. But the original source is the bacteria in organic dirt. And since we live now a healthy, sanitized sort of life, there is no organic dirt, so there are no bacteria and there is no B12. In fact, now, today, there is a lot of artificial production of B12 by cultivating bacteria, and 90% of that is going into animal feed. So the usual source for B12 for people is artificially produced in bacteria cultures, fed to animals, and then via animals into humans. So why not eat it directly? You could put this B12 that comes from this bacteria into soya milk, as it is done, into toothpaste,
yes,
and into jam, and into bread, and into margarine.
In America
wherever.
and Britain, there is a lot of they are adding B12 into cereals, bread,
Yes.
milk.
Yes, definitely. And if you look in detail, at least in Austria, there is a number of products that have B12 in it. So, but I use now the toothpaste. I find it a cool option. You don't swallow it. You just brush your teeth with it, and it goes then via your mouth into the bloodstream without ever swallowing it. And that turns out to work very well. I've been vegan since 1989, which is quite some time. In 1982, I turned vegetarian. And so I did check my B12 occasionally, and still do. And last time I checked, I had huge amounts. So obviously I get a very good supply from the toothpaste.
Yeah. Well, we have to say that B12, it's actually always natural. when we get it in tablet, it is not artificial stuff, it's natural stuff.
It's not chemically produced,
Yeah, exactly.
It's from bacterial culture, from exactly those bacteria who either grow in the dirt on the carrots or wherever, or they grow in a lab.
Exactly. And from the environmental point of view, there is a lot of stuff going on about this carbon and climate changes, but very few organizations, let's say 1 or 2, are actually being honest with us, telling that the biggest problem for global warming is actually meat. Nobody wants to tell this. Why?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to animal production, there's a lot of environmental aspects, and which is clear because if you produce, say, soya beans and then you eat them, or you produce them and then feed them to pigs and then eat the pigs, you have a huge loss of energy, and that destroys the ground, that destroys the soil, that uses far too much water, and all these aspects. But in addition to that, there is what you just said, the climate change problem. I know that as a scientist because in my time at the Cambridge University in the beginning of the 90s, I did atmospheric science as an applied mathematician also. And we found then already, long before there was a talk of climate change, that there is climate change coming. And that's because of the CO2 release or methane release. So I did a lot of methane research, and methane is coming primarily from animals. From farmed animals, because farmed animals are hugely more biological mass than humans now. We have whatever 60 billion, and there's two-thirds of all land vertebra biomass is farmed animals for no other reason than to eat them afterwards, and they produce obviously a lot of methane, and that goes into the atmosphere and acts as a greenhouse gas. That means the sunlight comes through, but the heat light, the infrared light, doesn't get out again, so it stays in there and heats up the planet. And definitely it does, and very fast. And if we were to stop using animals for animal production, that would be by far the best way to counter climate change, because CO2 that is produced through burning coal, say, or cars, oil, fossil fuels, that has a lifetime of about 100 years in the atmosphere. So if we stop now, for the next 100 years, it wouldn't change, it would get worse. But methane has a lifetime of 15 years. So if we stopped using animals now, within 15 years, all the methane would be gone, and we could stop climate change immediately. So veganism and the usage of animal products is by far the best, the best way of stopping climate change, and one of the biggest sources. It ranges about between 20% and 50% in the numbers, depending how you calculate, but approximately a third. So more than the cars, more than burning coal. And it's so easy, wouldn't it be? I mean, just eat the soya schnitzel instead of the meat schnitzel. That's all it's asked of you, and we could change it very quickly.
But tradition is so strong. It's so strong. You cannot change so quickly. Well, people want changes, but they don't want to change. That's the problem. And I don't know how to approach people to make this connection. Well, you and I were not raised or be born as vegans. We made something happen in our heads, but how to make it quicker, because we are out of time. For every animal, every animal that is dead, it's too much.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yes, the problem is, and the same applies for what you said at the beginning, that the ethical question. I do think people do care about animals, but it is hard to care if you at the same time eat meat. And with this discrepancy in your head, it's hard to live. So you have to in order to be able to look in the mirror, you have to downgrade farmed animals. You have to say they aren't actually feeling about something, or they are so stupid anyway. So in some ways you have to do that in order to justify yourself. So why are they stuck, people, in this way that they have been set at birth and never get out of this track? They are stuck because we are social animals. We are animals who just want to be like everybody else is. We don't want to stick out. We want to smooth in, go with the stream, and just be like everyone else. This is sort of sort of the goal, or this is something sticking out, being different is something hard to swallow, something people wouldn't want to do. So to change a system where everybody wants to be like everybody else is obviously very difficult. So you have to pioneer 5% or 10%, those that do the vegan fest right now. Yes, and they establish a niche, and they do a very good job and very important job in order to establish the alternative for the future. But how do those 10% get the 90% to follow suit? I think the only way there is a smooth change of the whole stream. You have to basically change the way the tracks go, so that everybody follows it and follows towards veganism. And there might be just only little switches you need to do, but these switches are political. So I very deeply think it is not enough to do awareness and outreach and change people's minds, because then they still act according to everybody else or like everybody else. You also have to do political changes. And political changes could be changing subsidies so that it just suddenly gets more expensive, the meat. Or in some way set things up in a way that it becomes more easier, cheaper and normal to be vegetarian or to have the plant option. And so slowly and surely the whole society could move that way. That would be how I perceive a potential realistic chance of a society change.
Yeah, but now there is a lot of talk about vegans or veganism, about soya especially, and these lobbies now are trying to tell people that soya is not good, that is genetically modified. So, but actually people are not aware that they are eating this soya through animals.
Definitely, yes. The genetically modified soya is in South America. In Europe, there is very little of it, and
it's corn. In Europe, a lot of corn.
Okay, but with soya, it's definitely in South America, and this is where you get the cheapest and easiest source for the protein for the animal feed. So indeed, people do eat this genetically modified soya if they eat animal products. But if you buy your usual tofu in Europe, then most likely, at least in Austria, I'm 100% sure, especially the organic tofu, is all locally produced. Yeah. There is the Danube tofu soya production. There is in this area around Vienna, there is Tullnerfeld soya. I have an uncle actually who has soya fields and produces his own tofu and sells it as one of the producers. And this is all not genetically modified. It's just a normal bean. It's like other beans they're growing on a field. It's just a bean that has the quality, just by chance if you want, but the quality that its spectrum of amino acids is very similar to human flesh. So it has a spectrum of protein that you can very easily use for producing your own tissue. It just happens to be so, which is why it's interesting. But it is nothing special about this plant. It's just a normal plant.
They are trying to scare people. Well, actually, they all think that soya is something new on the market, that soya never
for thousands existed. Of years, soya was used
in Asia, right? Yeah. And people were healthy. Now there are coming McDonald's and milk and everything. Now it's getting worse in China and Japan.
But soya is a long tradition. It has all been eating all the time. I mean, there's a number of beans, and in Austria it's called pig beans because it was all fed to pigs. But in reality, as we know, it is very versatile. You can use it in a billion different ways for producing super food for humans.
Yeah, and people now, they also, when we talk about vegans and veganism, we are actually against animal torture, but we would eat, and we eat like humanely produced milk, eggs, and meat. So
I wish the people did, because it's just not true.
But we don't see those animals that are so humanely treated. Where?
Yeah.
How is in Austria?
Yeah, Austria is, in international comparison, a country with quite a high organic or free-range animal production, and it's unbelievably small compared to the conventional non-organic, non-free-range production. With pigs, for example, this is less than 1%. Less than 1% free-range pigs. Who are these people who are eating all the free range? This is just an excuse, nothing more. With eggs and with beef or cattle flesh, it's a bit more percentage, so that we reach say 3-4%, but still ridiculously little. There's absolutely no big free range farming. It's all conventional. So I fear this is just an excuse. People, if you ask people, yes, they all say, yeah, I'm against factory farms, I'm eating free range, but it just can't be true, because otherwise it would be the case. And I have done that. I've stood in supermarket shelves and seen people grabbing this conventional meal. I said, are you aware that this is conventional produced meat? This is intensive farming. These creatures never see the sunlight apart from on the last day of their life. So are you aware of that? And they say, really, where's an option? There would be an option, or there's the vegan stuff. And then they do it. But if nobody looks, they just grab the cheapest thing. Yeah, this is... but I mean, the explanation is again easy. It's because it's the shelf in your eyesight. It's the cheapest thing. It's what everybody else does, and it's an effort to get out of this. And why do this effort if nobody sees you doing it, and if you don't feel a difference afterwards? If everybody else was doing it at the same time, they might. So, which is why I call for political change. The awareness is a very big part, but political change is there too. The politicians can't say, this the responsibilities was the consumer. They are themselves responsible for subsidies. They're responsible for the way there is production as animal treating. You can do laws. You can change advertisements. You can ban the way this meat is sold by saying these happy cow pictures, and then it's actually intensively reared. So you can ban that. You can intervene there, and if they were willing to do this, then it would be easily possible. I'm sure. It's just that animal industries is so powerful that they put pressure on politics and coerce them not to change anything.
And so, well, the change will come when we all change, but first within ourselves. So if I change, I become vegan and everything, but I still have very hard time with dealing that animals are still killed, not for me, but still killed. What can I do? What can I do politically? What can I do?
Yeah, in our society, we often feel overwhelmed, especially with this animal problem, if you want, because these gigantic slaughterhouse walls, they seem never to go away. This powerful animal industry lobbyism, this is just unsurmountable, it feels. But in Austria, we have seen in a few campaigns that actually just a group of 5 people in a room can decide, as we did, we will ban caging rabbits. Why not? And then we went out of the room, got people up in arms about it, did a confrontational and focused campaign, and 7 months later we had a ban on that. So if 5 people in a room can do that with this caging, so we might be able to change the world if we just believe we can do it, and if we invest enough time and energy and do it in a focused and smart kind of campaigning way. So I would suggest, aside of being vegan, which is obviously the most important thing, to join political campaigns, to gather together, to take the power back and in your hands and actually change society, because we can, as a society, we actually would have the strength. We shouldn't be paralyzed like the mouse in front of the cat.
Yes.
We should go out and change things.
Yes, of course. Power to the people. So how many people are working in Vegete?
Yeah, we started in 1992, and all without anybody. I was working for years without being paid. And now we have 27 people employed, half of them half-time employed and the others full-time employed. We have a budget now for the second year of over €1 million a year. And we have offices in Vienna, in
Where do you
Linz,
get money?
in Graz. Solely from membership. We have 22,000 members who pay at least €35 a year, and some pay more. And with that, we get this together. Government funding is not just nil. It's we are being confronted by them all the time, and they try to disrupt our work all the time. Just 2 examples. Recently, they have in the last year sent 3 times the tax inspections round, in order to find if we do some tax fraud, which is typical if you do against political dissidents. And secondly, they have announced publicly that it is impossible to deduct your donations for animal protection from your tax. So only animal protection, all other causes are good, but animal protection you can't deduct from your tax. And the finance minister who announced that literally said otherwise the state would fund groups like VGT. He said that publicly. That was his explanation. So there's a VGT, anti-VGT law. So yeah, they are trying to prevent our work, and they're trying to hinder and stop any change towards a more healthy, environmental friendly and animal friendly lifestyle.
But why? Because Austria, it's like, Austria. I know it's not. People are not so open, because in Slovenia we have the same problem. But I thought that maybe they're going more to to this path of what is actually problem, hunters or who is?
And the problem seems to be that there is a quite small, financially powerful and politically powerful elite who are just living off this animal industry.
They have
and
animal,
they link up the animal industry leaders and the leaders of the hunting fraternity and a number of people who are politically powerful. They are basically identical, and there's a little circle of people who just prevent any change and abuse their political power to stop us from doing anything bottom up, any change.
So they're really endangered by you. Well,
they feel threatened. Yeah.
Threatened, yeah.
I mean, this year we, for example, had a real problem to have our vegan mini in Vienna. They tried to stop us anywhere in the city to do it, and eventually, for the first time, we had to book a private square in order to be able to run that vegan mania, because the political people just want to remove us wherever they can. We are for them the enemy, and if you look at other social movements, they feel far more threatened by us, and it seems to be that there's the biggest money loss approaching them. We have a veggie boom, we have a vegan boom. People do start listening. We proved that we could change the law from bottom up, which makes it more expensive for them. So we are the enemy, state enemy number one, and we can feel that wherever we go.
But it's really funny. Yeah, but I also saw that there are laws in America that actually they trained, special police, and they trained them like that they should treat animal rights activists like terrorists. Actually, it's happening also in America, that you can go to jail for a lifetime if they are threatened by you so much as an activist.
Yes, in the USA and in the UK, in England, they managed that, in their view, pretty well, because they sort of changed laws. The SOPCA law, this criminal organizational law in England, is used against normal protests, so they have really come down. Well, we in Austria, we managed to get the population up against this, so we actually were able to sort of stem the tide and keep those terrorist laws at bay a bit. But they have now introduced the next state protection law, as they call it, which gives all the power to the political police, and they have a chapter that is solely concerned with animal activism. And now they're supposed to get the power. We are fighting it. We hope we can prevent it. But they're getting the power to use spies as they like, to liaise with the American NSA, and to spread all information they gather. And they can gather information without being checked or overlooked by any agency or law or courts. So, and all that riding the wave of the terrorism hype. There's the threat of Islamic terrorism, so we must attack animal protection or people or animal activists. So that's just proves how much they abuse the situation.
But that is actually good thing, because it means that something is really happening.
A good sign.
A good sign, yeah.
Not a good thing.
Yeah, a good sign. Yeah, it's not a good thing when you go to jail because of this. But a good sign that actually something is really, really happening. Because at first they are making laugh, from your activism, and politics said, these are hippies, these are Hare Krishna, don't bother. Now actually they are really threatened.
Yes, it isn't said that first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, and then they fight you.
Yeah.
and hopefully then they don't win because because that is not clear that they actually are not don't have the power to actually stop us. But yes, indeed, when we managed to get the ban on caging hens, caging laying hens, I always felt what a ridiculous advance. Yeah, the hens are instead of in a cage in a room. So is this the big sort of hooray?
Yeah.
What's the big thing? But looking at how much they attacked us, it must be a big thing. For them, it means twice as many costs in order to produce the same product. This is alarm bells ringing. Anyone thinking capitalist and profit-oriented, think twice as expensive, the same product. It can't happen, so we must remove those people. So, but we managed to get that there. We managed to stem their tide of attacks. So I hope we can get the whole society to see the light and actually go the next step further, leave the hens out and maybe leave eggs out altogether at the end of the day.
Well, the last question is, I'm mostly interested in this thing. There is animal welfare, animal rights, abolitionism, and everything. Well, some people, I also say that maybe it's better to go one step ahead. It is hard for me to understand that because I know how many animals are killed in this process. But if I go and say, no, you have to abolish everything, I know that their anger and their fight will be much harder. What do you think about that? Mm-hmm. To go one step at a time, or just say, no, we want to free animals.
I mean,
right
I am
now.
Abolitionist by heart. I want an end of animal abuse. My path there is reformism, confrontational reformism. Sounds like a contradiction. I feel it isn't, because if I imagine a society that actually stops using animals, that isn't a society that has just now used animals arbitrarily and next morning they stop completely. There must be an intermediate phase where they are more respectful and protect them more. So I feel human societies don't abruptly change, apart from through violence or through earthquakes, sort of something. But if they move as a society, it must be smooth. There are far too many minds there in order to do that from one to the next day. So if it's smooth, then it is more and more and more welfare, more and more protection, more and more respect, and now we don't hurt you at all anymore. In that sense, I think politically and psychologically, it is a smooth transition, even if philosophically it's a completely different idea. Last comment to that, if you want, I sat in prison because the police or the politicians or the animal industry head was thinking I'm a threat to their system. So they put me in prison for 105 days and eventually was found not guilty. But in that prison cell, I realized how important tiny bits of difference of better kind of welfare for prisoners is. I sat in a cell 2 times 3 meters, very small. I couldn't get out at all, apart from 1 hour in 24 hours. And that 1 hour I spent in a 7 times 6 meter long concrete bathtub. I could never see green plants, trees. I could never do exercises. I couldn't read books. I couldn't visit people and physically touch them. If there was somebody saying we improve your lot now, and tomorrow you can have visits where you can touch people, or you can go into a green garden instead of a concrete, I'd say, yeah, please do that. It changes the world for you. It changes you from being sort of isolated and depressed until you see the sun, you see the green plants. That just makes a difference for you. And I imagine now abolitionists standing there and saying, no better welfare for prisoners. Either the prison system goes or all should stay the same. Then I say, okay, I prefer the welfarists because they are more realistic and they would get me at least out in the grass and give me a bit more life quality. So even from sort of the subjective point of view, I think it is both. We need to go this path towards better conditions for animals, more respect for animals, but be aware that this isn't. There is no line to stop, but we need to push on from one step to the next and keep the aim, keep the goal in sight.
So future is vegan.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, Dr. Martin.
Thank you.